It was 2013 in the morning on August 17, 2026, and the city looked like it had been left in a sink overnight. Rain ran down the precinct glass in crooked little rivers. Neon bled into the gutters. Somewhere below, a siren tried to cut through the fog and lost the argument. I'm Jack Cipher. Tonight, the caseboard was heavy with routers, remote procedure calls, VPN plugins, and a Windows privilege ladder left leaning against the wrong wall. No repeat offenders caught in the act tonight, no KEV listings on the sheet, but don't let that warm your hands. These perps may not be famous yet, but the street has a way of making unknown names notorious by dawn. First file, CVE-2026-18902, high severity, CVSS 720. The informant's tip, EPSS, sits at 2%. Not a scream in the alley, but enough of a whisper to make a detective turn his collar up. The victim is the H3C NX15 router, firmware V100R0117. This one is an armed robbery with a command shell in its coat pocket. The technical break is OS command injection, likely under CVE-78, improper neutralization of special elements used in an OS command. The vulnerable path is SEPs inside the SPSSEPs.WAN.repeater.set repeater proc function. The attacker sends a crafted remote request to that API and manipulates the my2p4 key argument. That argument should be treated like a plain Wi-Fi repeater key, harmless text. Instead, the backend appears to pass it into an operating system command without proper quoting, validation, or separation between data and command syntax. Step by step, the attacker reaches the API, supplies a value containing shell metacharacters, the router backend processes it as part of a command, and the operating system executes attacker-controlled instructions. The scope is narrow by version but ugly by location. The known affected release is H3C NX15 V10R0117. H3C networking gear is common in enterprise, campus, small office, and regional provider environments, especially in Asia-Pacific markets. An attacker who reaches the management interface may gain command execution on the router. From there, the playbook gets mean. Change DNS, intercept traffic, plant persistence, pivot into the local network, or use the device as a quiet tunnel for later burglary. The report says remote exploitation is possible. It does not clearly establish whether authentication is required, so defenders should assume exposed management access is dangerous until proven otherwise. Remediation is the part where the rain stops being romantic and starts being a maintenance window. As of this report, I do not have a confirmed fixed firmware version beyond the affected H3C NX15 V100R0117 release. H3C administrators should check the vendor support portal for an updated NX15 firmware build newer than V100R0117 and apply it as soon as it is available. Until then, restrict access to API-ESPs and all router administration to a trusted management VLAN or VPN. Block WAN site administration. Use firewall rules, not wishful thinking. Security teams should HUT web logs and device logs for requests to API-ESPs containing my2p4 key values with characters like semicolon, backtick, $, pipe, ampersand, or encoded variants. Network teams should watch for routers making new outbound connections they never made before. But that wasn't the only body on the slab tonight. CVE-2026-18900 came next, another H3C NX15 case, another armed robbery, CVSS 722, EPSS 2%, same product family, same firmware named in the report, H3C NX15 V100R017. But this time the door was marked backend RPC, and the suspect went by file.exec. Technically, this is also OS command injection, again fitting CVE-78. The vulnerable component is the backend RPC function file .exec in API-ESPs. The attacker manipulates the file argument. That name alone. In a safe design, a file operation would validate the path, constrain it to an allowed directory, and call file handling libraries directly. In this case, the backend appears to build an operating system command using attacker-controlled input. The attack chain is plain enough to chill the coffee. The attacker sends a remote request to API-ESPs targeting the file.exec function. The file parameter carries shell syntax disguised as a file value. Backend RPC accepts it, passes it into command execution, and the router runs the injected command. The affected version identified is H3C NX15 V100R017. The public note says the exploit has been made available, which changes the mood in the room. Public exploit code turns a quiet break-in plan into a street map anyone can buy. An attacker may use this for device takeover, configuration theft, malware deployment, botnet enrollment, or a foothold for lateral movement. If the router handles office traffic, the attacker may observe internal host names, redirect users, or stage attacks against management workstations. Authentication requirements are not fully clear from the brief, so exposure control matters. If OBSPS is reachable from the public internet, you have a problem that should not wait for the morning meeting. For remediation, there is no confirmed patched version in the intelligence sheet. The action is still clear. H3C NX15 owners should upgrade to the first vendor firmware release that supersedes V100R017 and explicitly addresses CVE-2026-18900. If no patched build is posted yet, remove the device management plane from untrusted networks. Disable remote administration from WAN. Place administration behind VPN with multi-factor authentication where possible. DevOps and network operations teams should inventory H3C NX15 units, confirm firmware, and apply access control lists around OBSPs. Detection should focus on suspicious file.exec calls, odd file parameter content, URL encoded shell characters, and outbound traffic from the router to unknown hosts. If compromise is suspected, export the configuration, rotate secrets, reflash firmware from a trusted image, and review DNS and routing settings. I barely had time to light another cigarette when the next file landed on my desk. CVE. Small travel routers have a habit of looking innocent. They sit in hotel rooms, branch offices, home labs, and field kits. But tonight, one of them had a knife behind its smile. The technical flaw is command injection, CVE-78 again, in the OVEPN client, so native plugin. The vulnerable function is OVEPN client.check config, reached through cgbn-glc. The attacker manipulates the file name argument. The normal job sounds simple. Check an OpenVPN client configuration file. But if file name is folded into a shell command without strict validation, the file name stops being a file name and starts being a weapon. The attack chain goes like this. A remote attacker sends a crafted HTTP request to icgbn-glc that invokes obn-glc that invokes ovn-glc.techconfig. The file name parameter contains command separators or command substitution syntax. The native plugin processes it incorrectly and asks the operating system to act on it. The result is arbitrary command execution on the device. The exact affected range is gl.inet, GLMT30000 firmware, up to and including 4.4.5. GL.inet devices are widely used by travelers, remote workers, security hobbyists, small offices, and teams that need portable VPN capability. That makes this especially dangerous. The component is tied to OpenVPN client configuration, so compromise could expose VPN material, tunnel settings, private keys, routes, and credentials. A successful attacker may gain code execution on the router, then sniff traffic, alter DNS, pivot into connected client devices, or establish a covert relay into a corporate network. The CVSS 9.8 suggests remote exploitation with low complexity and no required privileges or user interaction, though administrators should verify final vendor details. In practical terms, if the GLMT30000 web interface is exposed to untrusted networks, treat it like an unlocked back door in a bad neighborhood. The report names affected firmware up to 4.4.5, but does not provide a confirmed fixed release number. GL.inet owners should upgrade to the first firmware version later than 4.4.5 that the vendor identifies as patched for CVE-2026-18900. If that release is not yet available, disable internet exposure of the web administration interface, restrict access to trusted LAN or VPN only, and avoid uploading or checking untrusted OpenVPN configuration files. Security teams should review web access logs for ICG-bin-GLC requests involving obpn client.checkconfig and file name parameters containing semicolons, pipes, backticks, dollar parenthesis, encoded spaces, wget, curl, shesh, or nc. Network defenders should watch for unusual outbound connections from the router, especially to fresh infrastructure, paste sites, or command and control style endpoints. The night was far from over. Last came CVE-2026-18900, a Windows case with polished shoes and dirty hands. High severity. CVSS78, EPSS 2%. Product listed as Microsoft Windows. Not a repeat offender caught in the act, at least not yet. This was local privilege elevation through improper link resolution before file access, also known as link following. The likely category is CVE-59, improper link resolution before file access. Here's how the trick works. Windows User Profile Service performs file or directory operations while handling profile data. If it follows a symbolic link, junction, mount point, or similar reparse point without safely verifying the final target, a local authorized attacker can redirect a privileged operation. Step by step, the attacker first gains local access as a low-privilege user. Then they prepare a crafted link in a location the service will touch during profile handling. The user profile service, running with higher privilege, follows that link to a protected target. A write, delete, permission change, or file creation meant for a user-controlled profile path lands somewhere more sensitive. That can become privilege escalation. The affected product in the report is Windows 10 21H2. That version has been widely deployed across enterprise fleets, point-of-sale environments, kiosks, lab machines, and legacy business workstations, though many organizations have been moving beyond it. The attacker does not get remote code execution directly. They need authorized local access first, but that still matters. In ransomware operations, a low-privilege foothold is often just the first drink. Local privilege escalation can turn a phished user account into administrator control, disable security tooling, dump credentials, move laterally, and prepare domain compromise. No user interaction is implied once the attacker is local and able to create the needed link condition. For remediation, apply the Microsoft Security Update that addresses CVE 2026-18900 for Windows 10 21H2 for Windows 10 21H2. The intelligence sheet does not provide a KB number or build number, so endpoint teams should use Windows Update, WSUSUS, Intune, or Configuration Manager to deploy the relevant August 2026 Security Cumulative Update when available from Microsoft. If Windows 10 21H2 is outside your support channel, upgrade to a supported Windows release. Short of patching, reduce local attack surface, remove unnecessary local user rights, block untrusted interactive access, monitor creation of junctions and symbolic links in profile-related paths, and enforce endpoint detection rules for suspicious reparse point abuse. Detection teams should look for unusual McClink activity, PowerShell or KMD creating junctions, profile service errors near file operations, and low-privilege users touching protected directories indirectly. 4 cases. 3 command injections stalking the edge of the network. 1 privilege ladder inside Windows. No KEV badges on the files, but public exploit chatter around one H3C case and remote reach around the router cases make the message plain. Exposed administration is not administration, it is bait. Patch what has a vendor patch, isolate what does not. Put router management behind trusted paths, watch the logs like they owe you money. And if a device at the edge starts making calls into the dark, don't assume it got lonely. This is Jack Cipher closing the folder for tonight. The rain keeps falling, the city keeps routing packets, and somewhere out there, another bad actor is testing a parameter that should have been treated like evidence.